Everything that causes you suffering is here to save you. The tears of sentient beings are more numerous than the sea. Indeed, human suffering is so immense that words cannot fully describe it. As one pain passes, another arrives, turning human life into an endless sea of suffering, shrouded in fog. What is suffering? It is psychological pain, emotions compressed and accumulated into persistent torment, weighing heavily on the human heart. Suffering is not just a concept, but an evident truth in human existence. This is the first truth that the Buddha taught immediately after attaining enlightenment, in the discourse on the Four Noble Truths. Suffering is the first truth, a reality we cannot deny. In the scriptures, it is said, "The tears of sentient beings are more numerous than the sea." The suffering of sentient beings is so great that it cannot be fully described. When one pain passes, another comes like endless waves. Our lives are akin to a river flowing endlessly in a sea of suffering, with no escape. Suffering is not only a psychological state, but encompasses and governs our entire lives. According to Buddhist philosophy, the 8 sufferings are the 8 main causes that humans constantly face, causing endless pain and torment. By understanding the 8 sufferings, we will realize why humans are always in pain and why suffering is unending. The 8 sufferings of human life. 1. Birth suffering. From the womb, the fetus endures immense suffering. From birth, we cry. The first cry is not just a welcome to the world, but also a sign of the beginning of facing suffering. The suffering from the womb to birth shows that life is not a bed of roses. We must endure hunger, cold, and physical and emotional pain that no one can escape. 2. Aging. Suffering as we grow, suffering continually follows us. Youth may bring joy, but it is also full of worries. Studies, careers, relationships, and family all have their own challenges, and only when faced with them do we feel the price of maturity. Some suffer from failures, others from unfulfilled dreams, and some from broken relationships. The helplessness when things do not go as hoped, suffering from unmet desires, leads to despair. Then old age arrives with declining health. Eyes become dim, hands tremble, and the body is no longer as strong as before. At this time, the suffering from physical weakness becomes even more apparent. The pain of not being able to care for oneself, seeing loved ones pass away, and the fear of death become haunting, causing deeper agony. 3. Illness suffering. Illness is another unavoidable suffering. The human body, no matter how healthy, cannot escape the pain of disease. Each pain is a reminder that we cannot achieve immortality and that life is more fragile than ever. Suffering arises not only from the body, but also from the mind, as we face our limitations, helplessness against illness, and death. No one escapes illness in life. From minor ailments to terminal diseases, illness not only causes physical pain but also makes people feel helpless and alone. 4. Death suffering. Ultimately, one must confront death. While death is inevitable, no one escapes the suffering before it. There is fear knowing one is about to leave the world, regret for things left undone, and sorrow for parting with loved ones, as well as the sense of helplessness when realizing one cannot change fate. 5. Separation from loved ones. Suffering. The pain of being separated from loved ones. People cannot escape separation. Each farewell, each loss is a difficult wound, leaving the soul empty and sorrowful. 6. Living with those we dislike. Suffering. The suffering of living with those we dislike. In life, we do not always get to live with those we cherish. Conflicts and hatred cause pain, sadness, and a lack of peace. 7. Unfulfilled desires. Suffering. What makes life more painful is perhaps the desires and wishes that are never satisfied. People always seek happiness, wealth, fame, and love, but few truly attain everything they want. 8. 5 aggregates. Suffering. Suffering from the body and mind. The 5 aggregates, form, sensation, perception, mental formations, and consciousness, when not harmonized, lead to suffering. When the body ages and the mind is in turmoil, people fall into a state of unavoidable anguish. These sufferings, along with countless other pains, encompass the entirety of human existence. The root of all suffering is ignorance, not understanding that the true nature of life is impermanence. Without knowing how to cultivate the mind, accumulate virtue, and live selflessly, people remain submerged in the sea of suffering. However, if one who practices Buddhism reflects and understands the nature of suffering and diligently practices Buddhist philosophy, suffering will gradually lessen over time. At that point, one will come closer to happiness and ultimately achieve the supreme peace of nirvana. Dear friends, human life, after all, is a journey of constantly experiencing both joy and suffering. Yet suffering often feels heavier, shadowing every step, like an invisible dark cloud. Everyone has their own story, their own tragedy. Suffering in human life is unavoidable, but what is important is that we can learn to face and overcome it. Some seek religion for peace, while others accept suffering as an inevitable part of life. In the ups and downs of life, people gradually learn to let go of ambitions, recognize the value of inner peace, and find joy in the simplest things. Suffering may not be the worst thing. It is suffering that helps us recognize the value of happiness, and through pain, we come to appreciate the peaceful moments in life. Suffering, although an inevitable part of life, contains profound lessons that we can learn to grow and gain deeper understanding of ourselves and life. 1. Acceptance of imperfection. Suffering teaches us that life is never perfect, and we cannot control everything. People often live with high expectations, but when faced with failure and loss, we realize that imperfection is unavoidable. Learning to accept this helps reduce pressure, dissatisfaction, and resentment. 2. Patience and perseverance. Suffering does not always pass quickly. It requires people to learn patience, both with circumstances and with themselves. Overcoming difficult phases makes us grow, and perseverance becomes the strength to face future challenges in life. 3. Appreciating joy and happiness. Suffering helps us recognize the value of happy moments, no matter how small. Through hardship, we learn to appreciate joy, be grateful for simple things like health, love, and inner peace. 4. Increasing compassion and understanding. Suffering opens the heart to compassion. Experiencing pain makes us more empathetic and understanding of others' suffering. This understanding creates deeper connections between people, helping us listen and support those in need. 5. Learning to let go. Often, suffering comes from clinging to things that cannot be changed. The lesson from suffering is to learn to let go of what no longer belongs to us, thus freeing the soul from burdens and allowing oneself to move forward with a lighter and more peaceful spirit. 6. Seeking meaning in challenges. Instead of viewing suffering merely as misfortune, we can learn to see it as an opportunity to explore deeper meanings in life. Suffering challenges our resilience, willpower, and reveals true values and goals in life. 7. Self-healing and growth. Suffering can deeply wound, but it also offers a chance for self-healing. Through wounds, people find inner strength, learn to love themselves more, and grow in profound ways. 8. Living in the present. Suffering often causes people to dwell on the past or worry about the future. The important lesson is that we can only truly live in the present moment. Accepting life's impermanence helps us live fully in the present, without letting the past or future distress us. Dear friends, suffering not only brings physical pain, but also deeply imprints on the soul, touching the deepest emotions of a person. When facing suffering, people often feel the pain like a sharp blade. It can be the physical pain from illness or accidents, but at the same time, mental suffering can be deeper and longer lasting. Loss of loved ones, failure in life, or loneliness all bring heavy emotions, causing the heart to sink, as if being trapped in a never-ending whirlpool. In the midst of suffering, people often feel small in the face of life's harshness. Sometimes all efforts seem futile, leading to feelings of helplessness, unable to change or control what happens. Thus, despair can easily take over, causing people to lose direction and hope for the future. Suffering often triggers anger and blame. People may blame fate, others, or even themselves. The injustice of life, unmet desires, betrayal, or abandonment can ignite deep-seated anger. This resentment can sometimes be a way to cope with pain, but may also lead us into a cycle of hatred, imprisoning the soul in prolonged agony. Suffering often makes us feel isolated, as if we are the only ones bearing such a burden. Even with loved ones around, feelings of abandonment and loneliness persist. The solitude in suffering is so profound that sometimes one cannot share or convey it to others, leading to self-isolation and creating a barrier between oneself and the surrounding world. At the bottom of suffering, the greatest desire is for liberation. It may be the wish to end the pain, to find a way out of the impasse. This longing drives people to fight, seek ways to overcome, or even take extreme actions, as the inner tension becomes unbearable. Although suffering brings negative emotions, it can also open doors to hope. In suffering, one can find inner strength, learn to rise and overcome challenges. This hope is a small light in the darkness, but also a source of motivation to keep moving forward, knowing that all pain can,